Welcome to MyLife, Chassidus Applied, episode 53. So we begin a second year of this series, and thank God, Baruch Hashem, in response to last week's announcement about the MyLife Chassidus Applied contest, there's been a very enthusiastic reaction, which seems to be having a ripple effect and achieving at least the beginning of the objective, which is to create a chayes and a shturim, a seder among everyone, men, women, and children who are capable, and everybody is capable because the Rabbeim gave us the keiches by giving us Chassidus and not saying it's in any way elite, in the sense it's only for elitists, only for the special groups, but everyone's capable of applying these ideas to our personal lives. So there's been a lot of reactions, many questions. The guidelines remain as they are online, where you can see it all. If you're not familiar with this is a contest that will reward, due to the anonymous generosity, I should say the generosity of an anonymous donor, a $10,000 first prize to the winner of a Chassidus Applied essay that takes a contemporary issue or challenge in life and applies a maimer or a sikh or anything from the 7 Rabbeim, Chabad Chassidus Rabbeim, and applies it to a real situation in life. The first prize will win $10,000, the second prize is $3,600, and the third prize is a $500 gift certificate. You can see all the details at meaningfullife.com/mylife/contest, especially the guidelines and the details. But I do want to share, for those that are honoring me with spending some time on this hour with me on this episode 53, some tips, and a little response to some questions, even though I believe everything is really answered in those guidelines. But since there were some points that people wanted to clarify and also some tips, let me begin by saying the following. As I just said, the Alter Rebbe made it clear that Chassidus is not a maflega, which means it's not a party. It's not just for a group, it's for everybody, which is why this contest is open for everybody. And whether people who are trained or people who are not trained, we thought about excluding some individuals who maybe do this professionally. We decided to just go along with it because this is not an academic paper that we're looking for. I want to begin with that. This is not about writing an excellent paper that is going to be judged on the standards of university level or high level of language or of application of terms. This is about applying Chassidus to life. The Rebbe made it clear, and the Rabbi made it clear that you can learn Chassidus and you can apply it without necessarily having all the highfalutin terms or even knowledge. The key thing is to apply it in a relevant way. It should be grounded in a source, in a maimer, in a sikh, in anything from the Rabbeim, a grounded idea, and then applied in a relevant way that any secular person can read and say, wow, this is amazing. This is a true lesson. This is something I can do something with in a sustainable way. So this is not about judging a quiz who's going to win by points of presenting the most brilliant idea or presented with the most psychological terms. Obviously, a psychologist, a trained psychologist, who's familiar with psychology and the language of psychology will have their particularly unique way to do that. That's not a contest that they could be included in this. Here it will be judged far more for dvarim hayetzim min halev, of an emotional relevance. And this all of us can do. If you apply yourself, take a maimer and apply it to a person's life in a way that's sincere, that reaches the heart, words from the heart enter the heart, that's far more the approach. So it's not about right and wrong. It's not about what level it will be and who it's compared to. Because I've heard from some people say, I don't think I can do it. I'll definitely lose. How could I compete with the top scholars and so on? Well, you can be a great scholar and not necessarily always speak from the heart in a relevant way. And you could be someone that's relevant and not be the greatest scholar. The thing is that Chassidus is for everybody. You just have to, we may need some help. So as the guidelines say, so go to somebody for some help. The goal is to have an individual apply themselves in this fashion to a maimer Chassidus. So I reiterate again, it is open for everybody. And I do not think in any moment that anyone has any edge here or anyone has any advantage. Really, if you apply yourself, you may just win. Hey, you never know. I don't like to borrow terms from other outside sources, but I think it's even more than that because we have the keiches. And if you were think of it this way: if you met somebody who was really poured out their heart and soul, and they said they have a real problem or a real challenge, and you cared about them, and you looked into what the Rabbeim say about this, and you communicate to them what the Rabbeim say in a way that reaches that person, that can be the winning paper. Because that's by those are the merits. And of course, there are the details and the guidelines which you can review. So that's one thing. So it's not being measured by academic excellence, and it's measured by that type of relevance, based, of course, on a maimer and understanding of a maimer in a personal way, in a real way, not superficially. A few other questions people asked about anonymity. We would love to be able to allow it to be anonymous, but simply for the integrity of the contest. If it's an anonymous winner wins, then people can say that maybe it's someone that's self-serving type of contest. We have to have it transparent in a way that everybody trusts the integrity, that's not being awarded to anyone. That's why we have judges, objective judges, and we're making sure to do everything possible to be as transparent and open as possible. At the same time, if someone wants to submit something anonymous that the public doesn't know about, but we in our office we must know, because we need to know that it's a legitimate person for the reasons I mentioned and many more reasons. The judges actually will be judging blindly. They will not know who wrote the paper, so there'll be complete objectivity in that sense. But there will be one or two people in our organization that will know, and if you insist on anonymity and don't win, we can preserve that and discuss with you if it's a good enough paper that we'd like to publish, whether you agree to be published, and then we can discuss. But as far as the contest goes, as far as the eligibility of winning is conditioned on it being transparent and therefore with a name, legitimate name. As far as some other questions that were asked, I believe that the guidelines address all those issues. And I want to add that some people said that today the attention span of people is very short. What can an essay really do? Well, you know something, Chassidus is Chassidus. It will never change. That's the way that Rabbeim wrote it. The Rebbe would speak for hours on end. We're not here to be popular. Obviously, you can take an idea and present it in short to a few people. There's no question in my mind, and I see from the reaction, that something like this, if it awakens people to apply themselves and get excited to see Chassidus relevance, I believe that out of the woodwork will come all kinds of new talent. We'll discover people who are excellent in doing it, and they'll just help us do it even further, and this thing can grow and proliferate in many ways and many benefits. I feel that I don't need to be defensive or apologetic here, but there's really no downside to this, to be honest. It's a legitimate thing, people being rewarded with a good incentive, a good incentive that, thank God, that there are people who recognize the value of Chassidus and say its time has come, that Chassidus should be taught and Chassidus should be learned in ways, and we're happy to reward people for that. We reward them for smaller things. This is a direct Yefutza Meinesecha Chutza project. As far as, let's see here, a question was asked about some other elements here. Yes, we wrote in the guidelines that you could ask for help, but it has to be a paper that comes from one individual. I hope some of these guidelines and tips that I elaborated on will help the writing of these papers. It would always be a good idea if you show it to somebody and obviously have a good sounding board that reads it and say, yes, it has that effect, or they can help you refine it and improve it. The deadline for this is in 3 weeks, is in Rosh Chodesh Adar. It began last Sunday. You have 3 weeks from this, for another 3 weeks, which is plenty of time. Please share this with your friends, with colleagues, with anyone who may not be hearing this. I want to say a particular message to yeshiva bachrim. You're learning Chassidus, and by the shus of your anhola, I'd like to reach out to you and say to you that you have here an opportunity to be part of the revolution that the Rebbe initiated, which is to take your futza meinesecha chutza, take the meinesecha of Chassidus, and apply it to people's lives. This is our core mission. And Temchit Mimim, Kol HaYetzel Mechamas Beis David, the Rebbe Rashab established the yeshiva for this purpose, for us to be warriors, spiritual soul doctors. And what better way to do it than by taking a maimer, an idea in Chassidus, and applying it to people's lives. It'll enrich both those people and it'll enrich you in the process. And I say the same thing to a segregated way to B'nai Yisrael, Bonis Tzidkanis of our generation, students. You're learning Chassidus, you're learning Torah. We're going to be talking about that a little later, about women's Torah learning. This is the best way of taking an idea of Chassidus with a proper incentive and applying it with a woman's touch, the feminine touch that can be more nurturing, as I said, relevant in words that come from the heart and reach into the heart. And I hope these words will inspire everyone to participate. And as I said again, those that have not heard about it, please share this with those that may not have heard that, and let everyone be part of this. And hopefully this will be a good shlav, a good step toward the way of Yefutza Meinesecha Chutza Osimar Del Malka Mashiach. Yeah, okay. With that said, let's discuss something that's timely, being that this week is Yud Shvat on Friday, and it's 65 years from Tovshin Yud, the year when the Frierdiker Rebbe's Istalkus, that Shabbos Yud Shvat Tovshin Yud, and the Rebbe assuming the Nesius officially a year later, but immediately was already recognized by Chassidim that they accepted the Rebbe, and the Rebbe officially in his first Basel Legani Maimer Tovshin Yud Aleph a year later assumed official Nesius, leadership. So it's worthwhile saying a few words about this. And of course we have the Maimer Basel Legani. Basel Legani was a Maimer that was given out at that Shabbos, a kuntris, to be studied. It's a Maimer that consists of actually 4 Maimorim, each one with 5 chapters. So it's a total hemshech of 4 Maimorim that went Yud Shvat, Yud Gimel Shvat, and then Purim, and so on. And Beis Nissen, and you have printed in Sefer Maimorim Tovshin Yud, a total of 20 chapters. This Maimer was originally actually said by the Frierdiker Rebbe in Tov Reish Pei Daled. And later, the Rebbe, who was responsible for the publishing, divided into the Prokim, and this became the 20 chapters. And the Rebbe, Basel Legani Tovshin Av, Chazed, like it was the custom of the Rabbeim, the latter Rabbeim at least, that they began their first Maimer with the last Maimer of the previous Rebbe. The Frierdiker Rebbe did that with Reishis Goyim Amolek Tov Reish Pei, which was the last Maimer of the Rebbe Rashab before Beis Nissen. And the same, the Rebbe Rashab started Keser Yitnu Lecha, which was the last Maimer of the Rebbe Marash. So, Basel Legani became the Maimer. And then after that, every year, Tovshin Yud Beis, the Rebbe chazed the Maimer again with the emphasis on chapter 2 of Basel Legani. Tovshin Yud Gimel, chapter 3. In Tovshin Lamed, everyone wondered, Tovshin Lamed was chapter 20, so in Tovshin Lamed Aleph, everyone wondered what's going to happen now. The Rebbe had finished the cycle of explaining one of the chapters, 20 chapters, that last chapter. Tovshin Lamed Aleph, the Rebbe began the cycle again. So we have 2 Maimorim on Tovshin Lamed Aleph, Tovshin Yud Aleph. And the same thing this year, which corresponds to chapter 5. So we have a Maimer Tovshin Tezvov, and we have another Maimer the Rebbe said in Tovshin Lamed Hey. So 2 Maimorim, both analyzing and elaborating upon the theme of the chapter Hey. So it's appropriate to use that as what applied Chassidus, what can we derive from that in our personal lives. Now the Maimer of both Tovshin Tezvov, Tovshin Lamed Hey are tremendously deep Maimorim that deserve much more than we can allow here in this short moments. So it's definitely worth, and that's what we do. We study the Maimer, the Pei to Kei, together with the Rebbe's 2 Maimorim that explain it. But I want to just share maybe a thought or two that can be in the context of MyLife, Chassidus Applied. And that is the theme of the Holy Spirit of madness. What's called in English, shtus, what's called in Hebrew, shtus de kedusha, as opposed to shtus de l'umazeh. This is coming in context of the Maimer speaking about atzei shitim oimdim, atzei shitim, that the wood that was used to build the Mishkan was made out of atzei shittim. So the word shittim has many meanings, as this Perek describes, but one of the meanings is shittim from the word shtus, as the Frierdiker Rebbe explains in the Maimer. In Basel Legani explains that the Aveda of Machna Dire B'Tachtenim, which is manifest in the Mishkan, the Deir Hashvi, the 7th generation Moshe Rabbeinu, that brought down the Shekhinah down to earth, the Matan Torah, and then was consummated by the Mishkan, by the building of the sanctuary. How was it made? By taking the shtus of this world and turning it into atzei shittim emdim, into a shtus, into a shittim wood that erected and built a sanctuary, a Mishkan. So in this Perek he discusses the meaning of shittim, of this transformation. And he explains that just like the shtus de l'umazeh is what comes from the nefesh habamis, the folly, the foolishness of following the animal soul, which is interested in temporary things that have no permanent value, is a foolish thing, to choosing that over eternal things. But we transform it from shtus de l'umazeh to shtus de kedusha. What does it mean? And he brings the story by the Chasana where he danced, the Tana danced in a way that was with the different custom. He's taken the hadas, which is also shittim. They've taken a shot, a myrtle branch, a branch of the myrtle branch, and danced with it and another Tana saw that doing that, and he mocked him. It's not derech eretz for a Talmid Chacham to do that. But then when he passed away, the Gemara says that they saw between him and the crowd that was escorting him to his final resting place, they saw a flame of fire in the shape of Hadas. So he realized that this was actually an unbelievable revelation. That he went to Aved of Lamayla Metam Vadas, Lamayla Megeder HaSogeh. That not just he went beyond the natural, common sense or logical approach to things, he went, as the Rebbe explains in Tavshin Tezvav, which I'm going to elaborate now upon, Lamayla Megeder HaSogeh, even higher than, not just higher than comprehension, but even higher than the Geder of the category of the mind altogether. And the Rebbe explains, in explaining this, why is this so negated to the Hemshech, to the Maimon? Because when you want to make a direle is bora betachtenim, a shchina lamata, for atzmus is Lamayla Megeder HaSogeh. Like the Rebbe, Friedrich Rebbe says, less machshava tfisa beklal. So if you want to make a keli, a container, to contain so-called the defined manifestations of the divine, then seichel and midas, that's the keli for that, because they themselves are defined. But if you want to make a container and experience something that is beyond structure and beyond the rational mind, you need to do something that's also beyond. And what is that? That's just the kedusha. So in the Rebbe's Tavshin Tezvav Maimer explains in Tavshin Lamed He as well that this is reaching the etzem itself. So I want to just review one key point that the Rebbe says there. It talks about the three shittas in Chassidus brings. There's a Drush Gimel shittas from the Tzemach Tzedek, which was initially printed in Derech Mitzvah Chelik Beis, which was just a name used for publication purposes because of the censors and so on, and later now printed in Eira Teira in Yonim. That the Drush Gimel Shittas, where he talks about the three primary Shittas, about the three opinions on Eir. One opinion is whether Eir, divine energy, has in it particles or not. Is there a tziyur in it or not? Now, obviously, Eir is not a keli. Keli defines structure. Eir defines energy. So energy is always less defined than structure, because it's by definition energy. However, is the energy completely shapeless? In the sense, for example, taking a colorless liquid, water, and placing it in tinted glasses. So you may see the tint, but the water never assumes that color. It just looks like it does. So you put plain water that doesn't have any color, put it into a blue or red or pink or green tube, so it will appear that color. But the air doesn't have that seer in it. It's just for appearance purposes. That's one opinion. Another opinion is that it actually does have actual particles that may not appear immediately, but when you have the keli, it emerges. And then there's the third opinion that then, which itself has many opinions about Eiris and Kem, that the Eir on its own doesn't have it, but the keli causes it to have actual tzir. So the Rebbe explained that in the Maimer, and more elaborately in the Shabbos Parsha B'Shalach, following the Maimer. That would be 60 years ago. This year, 60 years ago, Yud Shvat Tovshin Tezvav. The Rebbe explained that these three levels explain the idea what the Rebbe, Friedrich Rebbe says in this Perek, L'mayla Megeder HaSogeh, because he says L'mayla Megeder. HaSogeh is understanding something, what he calls Yedias HaChiyuv. It's when you understand something in a very direct manner. L'mayla HaSogeh means you don't understand it directly, you extrapolate through Yedias HaShlila. You don't see something directly, but from process of elimination, you can identify something by saying it's not this, it's not this, it's not that. And from many shlilas, as the Rambam brings, the Meir Nevuchim, the Alter Rebbe brings it in Likutei Torah Pekudei, you ultimately can come to some type of picture. It's like throwing a rubber ball on a wall that you can't see. Throw it enough times, and the way it bounces back, you can get some type of picture of something through the process of elimination. But that's still hasogeh. It's only l'mayla from chiyuv dika hasogeh. It's not direct. It's not interpolation. It's extrapolation. Then, but he says there, it's l'mayla megeder hasogeh. Megeder hasogeh means it's not just because you don't understand it. So the only way you can get to it is through negating. That's ketzer hamasig. It means that the person who's understanding doesn't get it yet. But it's not geder hasogeh. It's just a matter of time, or it's a matter of comprehension through a negative way, through a process of shlila. Then there's Megeder HaSogeh that no matter how deep you are, it's fundamentally at its core, it's not graspable. When you say less machshava tfisa beklal, that God is beyond machshava, that's not just saying because we're not smart enough. And you'll have a little more thought and a little more maturity, you'll be able to get it. Lo yireini adam v'chai. You're getting now to the etzem. No one can live and see it, because if you could see it, you would be it. And lo ilu yadaita v'yisif. The only way you can be you and experience it can be only by not seeing the actual thing itself. So this is l'mayla megeder hasoga. So the Rebbe says these three levels is the difference between kelim, eris, and etzem. The kelim manifested in a way that you can comprehend it. You have tools, you have handles. Eir is energy, which somewhat is mufshat, and though it's higher than the kelim, but it can't say mal megeder hasoga, because the eir does ultimately relate to the containers in all three opinions. And then there's etzem. When you're dealing with atzmus, where you want to make a dida b'tachtenu v'shachanti b'seichem for atzmus, there you need l'mayla megeder hasoga. That's completely, you're doing something that does not only higher than average intelligence or higher than the intelligence of others, but it's higher than intelligence altogether. The concept of intelligence has no value there. And that is when he danced with the hadassim in such a way, l'mayla megeder hasoga, to make a keli for what? Was a chasana. Binyan adei the koyach ein sof of atzmus. To manifest that, you need to do something that's completely outside of structure, completely beyond. In the Rebbe's explanation of this in the Shabbos after Yud Shvat, he said, because in the Maimer he says that these three levels are also in the Eir itself. So in the Shabbos Pasha B'Shal, the Rebbe elaborated and explained that these are the three shittas of Eir. The Eir that's mitzuyer is chiyuv, according to that opinion. The Eir that's completely, that it's only mitzuyer through the kelim, that's Yidiyas HaShlila. And Shlila Behechlet, or Shlila Muchletas, even higher as he puts it there, is completely, the Eir is Apshutim Legamri, they don't have anything that is of the structure of existence. And yet that too comes down into containers. The Rebbe says that here, because it says L'mayla Megeder HaSoga, it means that you can have B'chol Moedecha, but it's Moed Shelcha. It's only relative to you. You go out of your regular containers. That's level 2. That's L'mayla HaSoga. But to go completely beyond is B'chol Meidecha Amiti, means that you completely go beyond it all. That's what's necessary here to experience the ultimate divine. Now, this is the general context of it, a really haskola dikini in Chassidus, but you see from this a very relevant application to all of us. What are we capable of? That's the question here. So if you go to the Shita of Eris Mitzvah, then you're capable of reaching a divine experience, but somewhat commensurate to your tools. But total madness, we're talking about madness of Kedusha. Total madness, that's only the capacity. You could say, not for us, not for most of us. So he says in the Maimon, no. Every one of us can reach that level, because we all can reach a level that is beyond all type of any type of structure. Which means, as he continues in the Maimon, something really revolutionary, the idea of how you transform it. How do you transform it? Let's look at the negative side. There's a thing called shtuz deluma. He says that is when a person is involved in the matters of the world without any logic. Let's say culture, conformity. Everyone's doing something, you're also doing it. This is a irrational type of behavior. We may think it's rational because we got used to it, but essentially it's irrational. You're doing it because others are doing it. Zeh tut welt, as he says. That's the way the world does things. Or, as the Rebbe brings, it could be even worse. It could be shtuz deluma, where you actually are involved in something, a passion that is absolutely destructive, like a taivas that are desires and passions and lusts that are completely destructive. L'mayla metam v'das, l'mata metam v'das. So the Rebbe says there's 3 ways you can deal with it. It could be through iskafia. Iskafia means you basically control yourself. You push it away, as he says in Tanya. Such thoughts come your way, so you just push it aside and you get yourself involved in something positive. Then there's a sapche, the first level of the sapche. The first level of the sapche is that you don't just avoid the negative, you weaken it. You weaken it by being so passionate in something that's holy, you weaken the negative passion. So you weaken the shtus deluma through doing something very positive. But that's not really sapche. You have not transformed it. You've just weakened it. Comes the third level of the sapche, where you take the same passion that is going lamatametam, shtus, going downward, beneath rationale, and you do something completely supra-rational, something completely crazy. something you would never do about your own nature. You go beyond yourself in simcha and joy. You go beyond yourself in charity. You go beyond yourself in committing to something. Not just rational, you go super irrational. And that super irrational takes the sub-rational of shtus the klippe and turns it now and transforms it, because now there's no room. You're taking that itself and just turned it around instead of doing something irrational or sub-rational. Because of the world or because of something negative, you've now turned it around and it's become a passion and a fire that's higher than anything, even higher than the structure, not even higher than Geder Hasaga, even higher than the Geder of structure. That's how you transform it, which is a topic we talked about all the way in the early episodes of My Life, the idea of taking something like the Koyach HaMesaveh, something you have a desire for, which could release itself in a negative way, and channeling it, the same passion, channeling it to something that's completely powerful, but also beyond rational. Because if you just do irrational, you never can counter a irrational desire, which is so passionate and beyond intellect, if you're not going to do something that's equally passionate, that's beyond intellect, being above intellect, and being above cheshbonus, and so on. That's the utter transformation. Now, though the Rebbe doesn't say it specifically, you could say maybe these are the three levels of Keli, Eir, and Atz Etzem. Then we talk about the Keli, Chiyuv. So Chiyuv means you understand something, so you understand it. Something, you understand that. Kedusha is more important than Klippa. So you didn't transform it, you avoided Iskafia. It's basically a type of avoidance. Suppressing it, as he says in Tanya. Then comes level number 2, Yediyas Hashlil. That's already higher than Hasage, and this has the power already to weaken the taiva, to weaken the shtus of lu'umazeh, the unholy insanity or unholy craziness, unholy folly or foolishness. And then comes etzem, which is completely beyond it all, and that has the power to transform it. Which, of course, can be applied to any person's desires. We all have our desires. And studying them is avoiding them, and then there's channeling them, and then there's transforming them. Let us move on to a topic that I began last week, and I didn't have enough time to discuss it, and we'll continue. This is the issue of beards. Okay. So several people wrote about the distinction. I was talking about picking beards out of nervousness or anxiety or habit to actually to purposely making a decision to maintain one's facial hair. So let me read some of the questions and feedback that came in and then take this further. Thank you very much for all your insights. I don't always have the chance to listen, but tonight you discussed beard picking. I would like to share what a student told me some years after he left yeshiva. While in yeshiva, he struggled a lot with picking his beard. He later saw a doctor who helped him understand that there's a condition called trichotillomania, which is a psychological condition that causes one to have a strong urge to pull out hair. He's able to fight it without looking at himself negatively for even doing so in the first place. For even doing it in the first place. Not necessarily does this apply to the one who asked, but it might be important for some to know Hatzlacha Rabba B'Avedas HaKedesh. Okay, feedback number 2. Thank you, Rabbi Jacobs, for addressing the topic of beard picking. With all due respect, I felt that the answers offered might be more relevant to the question of why have a beard, or how to instill in one's son the importance and value of growing and keeping an untouched beard. Being the wife and mother of 2 beard pickers, I feel it is important to point out that picking one's beard may be simply as nervous habits, such as biting one's nails. My husband and son live in 2 different locations, and each of them has this habit. Under periods of great stress, the behavior is more prominent and even leads at times to bald spots in parts of the beard. Thus, I would suggest addressing the underlying anxiety or stress and perhaps using behavioral methods rather than intellectual ones to try to help anyone with this problem. And finally, I trim my beard and I'm thinking of shaving. I often still daven at the Chabad shul in my area, and I've been wondering as to how to answer younger teens if they ask why I trim or don't wear a hat to shul. Is it okay to give the honest answer that I no longer consider myself a Lubavitcher? Okay, that touches this topic as well. So let's divide the 2. And I do apologize if it came across as a confused boundaries, because it's correct to say that picking beard may have nothing to do with a discussion about the person choosing to have a beard, and definitely deals with anxiety, and that, let's lay that to rest. That requires, most likely, either personal discipline if one can achieve that, or some therapy, that you can talk to someone to get beyond the anxiety, because it's just an expression of anxiety, like biting nails, as this woman wrote. So I absolutely defer to that, and what I was really focusing on is the bigger issue of a beard altogether, because that's also a topic. So beard picking clearly is very possible that it's connected not to a person's vanity, or a person deciding just by hand instead of using a machine or scissors to do it with a hand. We're talking by hand instead of just the nervous. If it's the nervous aspect of it, I think we said enough about that, and that is that one has to deal with, yes, the root of the anxiety and the stress, and hopefully can get to the root, the symptom will go away as well. But let's address the actual topic of a beard. It's been a topic that has been asked to me many times in our community, many communities, but especially in a community where a beard has always been so cherished. Though it's clearly a posuk in the Torah, and it's from the things of the Araisa, and the Tzemach Tzedek's Tshuva is well known. And there's a sefer, as I mentioned, Hadras Panim Zokim, where he brings all the dayas, all the opinions on it, explaining how b'diavad and loopholes about shaving. I'm not here to criticize anybody. Everybody has their way and their reasons. But I'm talking now from a Chassidic point of view, that the Chabad especially was Moshe Nefesh for a beard. In Russia, truth be told, there are many people, due to parnasa and discrimination, or may have taken off their beard. But later when they came to America, the Rebbe actually told people that he hopes that they start growing a beard. There's also stories where the Rebbe tells people that if you start growing a beard, remember you can't shave it off, so think about it first before you do it. And I read a letter about that. So what is the topic here? Most importantly for Bochrim. Why would a person tamper with this so-called, I don't want to call it a custom, because it's not a custom, it's a mitzvah. But why would somebody tamper with that? Because the question is how they see themselves. How they see themselves. The Rebbe makes it abundantly clear in letters, in Igros Kodesh. Some of them are printed in the Hesofis, the end of Likutei Sichos, Chelik Yud Beis, volume 12. As you see, I'm more familiar with them as they were printed in Likutei Sichos, because that's how they were first printed. Later they were published in Igros Kodesh. So there, the Rebbe makes a point in a number of places to show that Tzelem Elokim, that's what a beard always represented. In the language of Kabbalah, Chassidus, the Yud Gimel Tikunei Dikna, which means the 13 so-called strands, the 13 channels of the beard, which correspond to the 13 Yud Gimel Midas Harachamim. There was once in Yechidus, a couple was there, and they were telling the Rebbe they were married a number of years and they could not have children. So the Rebbe said to them with a smile, "A kind chapzachan in aborid." The man clearly was clean shaven, so the Rebbe said, "A kind grabs a beard," and you see this when you carry your child, especially younger children. They grab your beard. They understood the message. So he grew a beard, and they had children a little while later. So a beard, especially al pi Kabbalah and Chassidus. In Torah, Chumash, it's Gzeres HaKosov, and you don't know the reasons for it. It's considered the Tzelem Elokim, and it's considered something that is holy and sacred. But when you learn Kabbalah and Chassidus, it talks about being the channels for brachas, Yud Gimel Midas Harachamim. So someone who knows this, or has learned it, and is aware of it, this is what you want in life. You want to have brachas. And the Rebbe brings there in one of the letters, he says, envision Moshe Rabbeinu. Could you envision Moshe Rabbeinu? Aaron, Avram Avinu. You envision them with beards, with full beards. So it's not just about the Rebbe is not just bringing some type of image issue. It just means that it's always representative of some type of sanctity and piety. So the answer, and I'm not saying this to criticize anybody, if a person does not see that, it means that they're lacking, for some reason, they don't feel the importance of it. And maybe it was presented in a very negative way, just like many other topics, like tznius and other things are presented in ways that are more negative, don't do this, don't do that. The pride, the dignity of a Tzelem Elokim means that you respect that you are a walking image of God in this world. When a person feels that way all the time, obviously, not just the beard, their whole behavior. The Gerer Rebbe once told somebody who was dismissing someone that was shaven, he says, Beser ha'id, on abord v'abord on ha'id. Better a Jew without a beard than a beard without a Jew. Obviously, our goal is to have both. The point is, the beard is not just a external thing, it expresses something. It expresses something. And that is, I believe, the best way to preempt, to talk to our children, if they understood what it means to be a Tzelem Elokim, that you are an agent of God in this world, and that's your responsibility, that's your mission, so b'derech mamela, automatically you'll carry yourself with dignity, you'll carry yourself with the ways that the Torah says is the way that a Tzelem Elokim should look. That should be the approach. There's no question that has much more impact than talking the negative and yelling and screaming and reprimanding and so on, especially when a person has become an adult and they're not just going to respond to someone's critique. Sadly, we live in a time where there are a lot of challenges, and it's understandable why many people want to go to certain places and they'd rather not stand out with a beard, or for that matter with a yarmulke. Frankly, a yarmulke, as we all know, is barely a minig Yisrael. Now it's a minig Yisrael and represents so much. But a beard is beferish in Chumash. It doesn't say anywhere in Chumash about a yarmulke. I'm not minimizing the yarmulke, don't get me wrong. The Rebbe once sent a chassid to a certain yeshiva and said, check out if the bochrim have Yirah Shamayim. And he said to the Rebbe, how do you see if someone has Yirah Shamayim? It's not on their nose. So the Rebbe says, go see if they sleep in a yarmulke. So this doesn't mean it's a mitzvah. It means that sleeping in the yarmulke is a sign of a person who's carrying Yirah Shamayim with him 24/7. Now, some people, even not necessarily Bali Madrege, when they fell asleep and the yarmulke fell over their head, they would put it back on. By the Frierdiker Rebbe, the Rebbe Rashab, it says they straightened out the talis cotton. The point of the matter is, it's a sign what's on your mind. They say the story about Bialik, Chaim Nochem Bialik, who was the great poet and a great maskil. He was a knowledgeable person, but his Yirah Shamayim, no. I'm not going to measure it, but it was questionable to some. So he was once walking in Mei She'arim. He was going to find a shul to say Kaddish for his father at Yortzeit. And he meets one of the Yerushalmi kids, boys, and he says, Vuida shul ingele. Where can I find the shul, young boy, young lad? And the boy said to him, the Yerushalmi chutzpah, with the whole chutzpah and nerve, said to him, shul is not for Yidden, nicht for Goyim. Shul is for Jews, not for non-Jews. He says, mind you, he's speaking a fluent Yiddish. He says, well, the gehst on a kep. How do you know I'm not a Jew? Because you're going without a yarmulke. So Bialik, in his poetic way, said, Kippur Shamayim. The ganze Himmel is my yarmulke. Kippur Shamayim. The Shamayim is called a kippah, a covering. So the boy, without missing a beat, said to him, Zu greis a yarmulke for a kleine kop. Too big of a yarmulke for such a small head. So yarmulke became the symbol of Yirah Shamayim, and as many things, especially in the years of Golos, it's a way of Frusha Mesura, to keep people away from the wrong places. A beard even more so. So we understand the Nisyanis involved, but that comes down to what is your purpose and mission in life. If your purpose and mission is to enjoy yourself and to fit in and not to stand out, I understand. But if you felt that you were an agent, that you are an astronaut in space and your uniform is life and death, because that's the way you represent the divine in this world, then it's a whole different story. So I would rather discuss the root of it than to talk the symptom. Once a person doesn't feel that, obviously, whether it's a beard or it's another element of how they dress or how they behave, is going to be directly impacted by it. So that's the overall point about beards. And of course, much more can be said. Why a beard tafke? What is Yud Gimel Tikkun Dikne? The power of hair. And Mitzvah Hashem will talk about this as well in future episodes. So that's what I wanted to say about that. About regarding the giving an honest answer that you no longer consider yourself a Lubavitcher, well, I could tell you the Rebbe would say there's no such thing. Once a Lubavitcher, always a Lubavitcher. You don't consider yourself a Lubavitcher. What does a Lubavitcher mean? Lubavitcher is not a card-carrying member. Lubavitcher is a commitment to God. So the Rebbe would never accept someone saying, I have no more connection to God. You want to have different types of customs? Okay, people have different types of customs. Beard is not a Lubavitcher thing. A beard is a thing from Chumash, from Torah. The fact that Lubavitch is known for is maybe a good tribute to Lubavitch, that they stick to that mitzvah. Like the famous story with the Rebbe Rashab, the Chafetz Chaim, about Lashon Hara. Lashon Hara Retzach. A beard, you have to go and take it off. You have to do an action. Lashon Hara is not that it's a positive, Chaz v'Shalom. But a person speaks it, it doesn't take any particular effort. The cutting off a beard does. That's what he told the Chafetz Chaim when they talked about Lashon Hara compared to other yeshivas and beards. So I am not here to preach. I never preach. It's not my role. I'm here to just share ideas and share the thoughts that the Rabbeim said without compromise. And still, at the same time, you have to know the standards and then know how to speak to someone in a kind way and not with a stick, in a warm, kind way, as I said at the outset. Words from the heart enter the heart. if you say it with care and you help a person, inspire them to feel that they were sent to this earth for a mission, and it's a schus to be a shliach in any form or fashion of the Rebbe, and a shliach, like any mission, like I said, an astronaut wears a particular uniform. Yeah. Our uniform can be only external. Of course it could be only external. There are many people who wear the uniform and they don't live up to it, obviously. But the point here is to have both. That's something that represents that the pnimius is expressed in the chitzenius. And often the chitzenius is compromised when the pnimius is often not is questionable. Frankly, I will tell you, there are many people you meet that are extremely refined people, Chassidus She'idin, and yes, it may not have had a beard for one reason or another. It's not the litmus test. But at the same time, when you're a bocher and you have the option, and you're beginning to make choices, obviously the choice is to be able to try to have the best of both worlds. Okay. The next topic, a new topic, women and learning. According to the Rebbe, what are our women's obligations today regarding Torah study? How do they differ from a man's obligations? What changed over past generations? Are we surrendering to the feminist movement, or are we pioneering true feminism? I know that this varies from community to community, someone writes. It almost seems that the firmer you are, the less stress is put on women's learning, and they have less access to the heavy learning. Well, the next question I'd rather not read, but since someone wrote it and reflects their opinion, and I totally disagree, but I'll read it for that reason. I'm wondering, it was connection to the contest actually, the MyLife contest. I'm wondering if it may be a good idea to have one competition for men and one for women, since men often have the Gemara cup mentality, and women's submission may be lighter and less intense. Now, I hope a man didn't write this, because that would really be disturbing. But if a woman wrote this, it's also equally disturbing, and I'll soon address it. Another question. Should a girl's primary chinuch be that although the mundane is not glamorous, it is more than a necessary evil? I am Baruch Hashem blessed with 3 children and find that managing my home has become a more full-time job. It's hard work and I don't value the work. Oh, to be sure, I tried to tell myself that I'm a kohen in my Beis HaMikdash and I'm enabling my family's growth in Torah. But when it comes down to it, and I'm on the floor sweeping up the crumbs, I feel like it's missing the point. I just wasn't educated to value housework. I view it as a necessary evil and I tried to avoid it at all costs. This is a completely ineffective approach that results in a martyrdom attitude. As a teacher, I feel like warning my girls that one day it all comes down to the diapers and dustpans. Should I? Should I be warning them, obviously? Okay. Okay, so there's a variety of several questions here. So let's address this topic. So let's first start with the sources. So we have, thank God, besides many sikhs, where the Rebbe spoke about this many different times, and I'll sum them up in a moment, we have actually an entire sikh dedicated to this in Shabbos Pasha Emer, the Erev Lag BaEmer, Tov Shin Nun. In Sefer HaSichos Tov Shin Nun, there's an entire sikh about this topic, which begins on page 455, volume 2, Tov Shin Nun, Sefer HaSichos Tov Shin Nun. And the topic on hand is primarily from page 456 and on, the topic that we're addressing here. Interestingly, the Rebbe also spoke about it when he came out with the Takana to learn Rambam every day, whether it's 1 chapter or 3 chapters, or Sefer HaMitzvahs. This was Achron Shal Pesach Tov Mem Daled, or Tov Shin Daled Mem. And when the Sikha was edited, the Rebbe added a piece about exactly this, about women also participating in the learning of Rambam. And of course, bringing the famous Gemara, which everyone cites, that teaching your daughter Torah Shabbat Peh is like teaching her Avodah Zarah, because it will bring her to Armumius. What's Armumius? A type of wily behavior, mischievous behavior. Armumius is like being able to manipulate and so on. Which, of course, as soon as you read that Gemara, it always pops up all the sexist stereotypes. What does that mean? And what about when men learn it? As some people say, men are much more concerned about men who distort halachas for their own interests and benefits, as we've seen unfortunately happen. And women can be far more trusted. What does this Gemara mean? And what does it mean particularly today? So we have these 2 places that Rebbe addresses this, and I'll get to it in a moment. Let's start with the following. That, first of all, both men and women are mechuyev in limud ha-Torah. Limud ha-Torah means to learn Torah. Women are responsible to learn the Torah of the mitzvahs that they're relevant to them. Now, that doesn't happen to be 3 mitzvahs. It happens to be many, many, many mitzvahs. So that's number one. They have that responsibility. Beyond that, the Rebbe brings, they even get schar, even if they do learn and they do and the mitzvahs that about things that they're not mechuyev, they're not responsible, they also get reward. And then there's, of course, the point that even though the chiyuv, the mitzvah of chinuch of children is on fathers, we see b'poel mamish, you see a mother, especially in the early years, is more involved in education. And the shaping of a child's personality and mind and art is dependent on the mother. And she therefore gets also rewards as the Chanech Lanar that Rebbe Rasha brings from the Shalah. Where he says, actually the words are like this, from the Shalah. The Shalah says, let me quote, Hanoshim mitzuvis al teichachos techachas b'neim k'mo ya'av v'yesem mehem metam shem pnuyis mitzuyis yeser b'bayis. They're even more responsible in disciplining and educating children because they're more at home than the parent, than the father. So shalom. So that alone tells you, and they're educating their children, not just their daughters, also their sons. Then the Rebbe makes the key point, and that is regarding our generation, that we see b'poel. First of all, Zman HaShas, I should add, that even though the Gemara says what I quoted before, you see in Zman HaShas, and the Rebbe brings Berudia and others, who clearly women who are knowledgeable not just in the written Torah, but in Torah Shabbat Peh. And then primarily, when you start looking in later generations, you bring the stories of the Freida, the Alter Rebbe's daughter, and then of course in our generation, you find that this is applicable to all Neshei B'nai Yisrael. Because Eis Lasa Eis LaHashem, we see Gedei Yisrael of all groups, not just of certain groups, have established in our generation, Moizdes Chinuch for Bnei Yisrael, which was unheard of before. So, just like we say that about Tznius, why? Because Kfuda Bas Melech Prima, the role of a woman is more internal and not external. So the women, their education was at home. They learned from their mothers, their grandmothers, and so on. But we see that change because we live in a world where people go out. It's no longer that world. The same is with education. In a time where it was pure environment, and you learned everything from within a very insulated and very kedusha and environment, and a saturated with purity, so there's no need for going further than that. But here's the words of the Rebbe, that here belav hachi, regardless, women and girls are learning all kinds of different learnings where they do have nichnas behem armumius, that learning all kinds of different things, whether it's secular education or it's neutral education, that anyway teaches them. So not only are they allowed to learn Torah Shabbat Peh, but even moreover, they have to learn it. And not just the laws that are negayat halacha, where there for sure you don't have the whole concept of armumius, of manipulation, or because it's halachas lamaisa. That's what the Rebbe brought also about the Rambam. You don't have that whole concept. But even taimei halachas, even the reasons, where the reasons you could say, once you know the reason, maybe you'll start playing with it. Why? Because we anyway are exposed to all kinds of other things in life. So to say, I'm not going to learn Torah, Adarabah, learn Torah, and the Rebbe's word, Shemeteva, that once you learn it with a shakavatariya, and you learn it with your mind, and you apply yourself, and you understand the reasoning, that itself gives you that type of passion, and it helps you develop and actualize your potential and your talents. So then the armumius, meaning your own way of thinking of things, of your own maneuverings, and so on, will be beruach terasenu hagdesha. Will be in the spirit of Torah. The Rebbe also brings from Iglis Kedesh from the Frierdiker Rebbe, volume 5, page 336, where he talks about the women who debated matters of halacha, and also helped edit the svarim of their husbands who were tzaddikim and ge'enim, and commented them and added and subtracted and so on, showing that type of involvement. So not just involvement in action, involvement in the theory as well. Because today, being that we're using our minds in theories of all kinds of sorts, to use it in the area of Torah is adrabah chiyuv. And above all, you see Ma'aseh Rav. you see with the Haskama, with Gdei Yisrael, that things have changed. So regardless what was in the past generations, it was a different world for men as well. Just like Chassidus was not revealed for the majority. And Torah itself was also once only Mishnah, then it became Gemara. So due to the change, today women are absolutely involved in that study and responsible for that study. Now this is even Nigla. Now let's talk about Chassidus. When it comes to Chassidus, as the Rebbe brings from the Hagdama to Sefer HaChinuch, there's 6 mitzvahs that are eternal mitzvahs that are not mazman grama, they're not time-bound. Belief in God, avos, love of God, Yiras Hashem. These, as the Sefer HaChinuch says, are mitzvahs that are tamid le'el, they're always. So what does Chassidus teach? That's what Chassidus is. Yedias Hashem, Amunah Hashem, Avos Hashem, Yiras Hashem, Avos Yisrael. These are equal obligation to men and women alike. And Adarabah, the Rebbe brings a number of places, because women have their feminine touch, and they have a certain emotional nurturing element, emotional intelligence, so they can bring out elements of Chassidus that are far deeper than men can. And I can speak from experience, as a chayzer and working in the Rebbe Sichos, that some of the deepest concepts in Chassidus were said in the Sichos that the Rebbe spoke to the women, which was usually 3 times a year, before Rosh Hashanah, before Shavuos, and after Shavuos. Where even though the Rebbe spoke, so to speak, in deceptively simple language, it was some of the deepest ideas in Chassidus being delivered there. And the Rebbe brings about the Frierdiker Rebbe saying, my morim and sichos to women, and so on. So the the approach is that especially in our day and age, where the cheshach has become so dark, we need all the light we can gather. And it would be a shame if only men applied themselves and not women to the learning, especially of Chassidus, especially with their unique touch and their unique application, which is, by the way, why we made the contest open to men and women equally. Some said, and I absolutely disagree with this person writing, Gemara cup mentality. I don't know if you mean it as a chassidin or a maila. If you mean that mathematicians and abstract and then have nothing to do with grounded, then women are superior so. And I absolutely believe that anyone applying themselves, man or woman, can win this contest and this competition. It's not, because it's not about superiority. The fact that Bochrim men went to yeshiva maybe more hours, it's not about hours, it's about application and taking an idea and applying it to life. So overall, the bottom line is, these are the guidelines, these are the changes that happen in time, and that today the women, especially considering the Kevet to Seviv Gover, that the Rebbe brings, that one of the reasons that you have today, in addition of that didn't exist in the generations before, so there in the footnotes that Rebbe brings, is because that we're living in the time of Geula, where it being the Kevet to Seviv Gover, Eishes Chayil Ateres Baila, and as such, just like Chassidus is a taste of the Geula, Chassidus is a taste of the Geula Mitzvah Rashlema, like Erev Shabbos, which is the Elef HaShishi. In the 6th millennia, we have a taste of what the revelation will be of Shabbos. The same thing, women, being that we're at the verge and we are of a feminine age, we're Keich HaEin Sof, the keich of the Helam HaAtzmi, of Eir Legalis LaAtzmi, Kfuda Baspelech Pnima, will be revealed, which is a far deeper energy, an intimate energy. So preparation for this intimate energy is why today the role of women takes a priority and a leadership role in the teaching and the learning of Chassidus, Torah B'chlal. And with their unique touch, and they can teach men that type of sensitivity that's necessary when teaching these ideas, that they don't remain abstract and detached and are grounded in ways that people can apply them to their lives. As the Rebbe brings many times from the Gemara in Yevamis, that talks about that a man goes out to the field and he threshes, he gathers the wheat and he brings it to the house, and the woman turns it into bread. The same thing with garments. A man brings in the material and she turns the fleece, she turns the wool into garments. In the beautiful sikh of Chav Beis Shvat, Tov Shin Nun Beis, B'chol Yevorech Yisrael, the last Chav Beis Shvat sikh, the Rebbe says, in Dira B'Tachtenim, you make a dira, is taking the raw elements and turning it into a shelter. But then there's the beautiful home, Dira Noah, a beautiful home, a warm home. Chaya Mushka, the Rebbe used their name and explained, Chaya, a house filled with vitality, with chayis, with life. And Mushka from muscat, a perfume, a beautiful aroma. That is the feminine touch in Dira B'Tachtenim. And that is Marchiva Daita Shalodam. You could live in a home and you have shelter from the storm, protection from the elements. Closed place, you have shelter. But a shelter could also be a home that just bare bones, just a log cabin. Then comes a dira noah, which is also part of the kavanah of atzmus, not just to have a dira, not just a shechina v'shechanti b'seichem in a building, but the Mishkan was a beautiful building. It was made of the best materials, and the women participated in that. It was made of gold, silver, and copper, and the same thing with the Beis Hamikdash. And that's the feminine touch. So you need both in making the dira b'tachtenim, Yud Shvat v'shechanti b'seichem, that we bring the Shekhinah down below in this Deir HaShvi, like Moshe Rabbeinu did, like I discussed earlier, Shtuz de Kedusha, transformed from Shtuz de Lumazeh, so a woman have a particular role in that, the role of bringing that warmth, that bringing that sensitivity, the feminine touch, to the learning of Torah and learning of Chassidus, which is perhaps more necessary today than ever before, not just learning in academic, dry, and detached ways, but making it relevant. Chassidus Applied. We will go. We'll take one more topic here, and the topic is: my husband's job might entail him working night hours 5 nights a week. What should I say? Should my husband find another job, even though it may be hard for him to find one with the good benefits he now gets? What about similar cases, such as when a husband has to travel for work? So, home versus work. That's the topic here. Well, a quick answer is the following. Yes, case by case, there may be situations, and we have Chassidish that sometimes had the night shift, and it could be very taxing on them and on the family. So obviously, if you have an option to avoid that, of course, to work in 9 to 5 in normal hours where you can be with your home and family for dinner and wake up with everyone and so on, that would be optimal. So it's hard for me to give a ruling here and say that you have to change because it may not be possible. I think in our day and age, it's a lot easier to find different type of job opportunities. And generally, it's not necessarily the healthiest thing for a husband to be working all night, for many reasons. So clearly, I would definitely look at finding an alternative. I don't know what the husband's position on this is. I only know what the wife is writing, because this is coming from her. So it'd be important to discuss it together, so you hear all the angles of the topic before coming to any type of advice. That's why I'm loath to say any advice about this without getting the picture, because I don't without getting the full picture, because I don't want it to be used in a way that may not fully understand or appreciate all the details and the nuances. That being said, and generally speaking, the kavanah of dira b'tachtenim is to make a dira, and your home is the first place that you make this dira. Work is meant to be a means to an end. If work starts becoming an end on its own, obviously it can create plenty of problems. That's why there's an expression in Chassidus that says that your work should be done b'loi lev v'lev. What means b'loi lev v'lev? Which means without a heart and with a heart. As the Rebbe brings, that yodecha, your hands, should be involved. But your head and your heart, especially the primary part of your mind and your heart, should be reserved for higher spiritual things. So there's a means and there's an end, and you have to know distinguish between the two. That Chassid, the famous story that he made a lot of money in galoshes manufacturing. He was a chos of the Rebbe Rashab, and he came to see the Rebbe Rashab. The Rebbe Rashab gave one look at him and saw where his head was at. So he said, "A fist in galoshen, aber gesehen, aber a kop in galoshen." I've seen feet in galoshes, but a head in galoshes. So you have to know where your feet belong and where your head belongs. That's an overall statement. Unfortunately, in this world, many people have replaced their spiritual transcendental needs through channeling it, the opposite of Shtuz de Lumazeh, being channeled into Shtuz de Kedusha, taking Shtuz de Kedusha and channeling it in the passion and the drive for making money, for kavod, for other temporary things, for other taivas. So this is part of the challenges that we have, that we need to address. But it's very important from time to time, especially now that we're standing right before Yud Shvat. Yud Shvat is a time when the Rebbe became the Nasi. It's like 65 years later, and you could say it's a long time. But it's interesting, Rosh Chodesh Shvat, Tafshin Yud Aleph, there's a letter where the Rebbe writes that we're about to approach the first anniversary of Yud Shvat, Tafshin Yud. And the Rebbe says, Over Cherif, the winter has passed. Kol HaKayitz, the summer has ended. V'azman Eisa Shashalech. And time has done what it does. You read those words, your heart can break. Because the Rebbe captures in such a simple terms what happens to all of us. We have magical moments. We have moments that are unbelievably inspiring. And then time passes. And we forget. We forget, this was just almost a year. Now we're 65 years. So we have to, what do you do to counter that? That's why you have Chassidus Farbrengens. That's why you get together. That's why you sing a nigun. You tell a story. You do a mitzvah. You learn something from the Rebbe. You follow his directives. Because you want to reignite the same passion. Kol yem yeh beinecha, as the Rebbe cited so often from Sifri and Rashi. Ki chadoshim. Every day it should be like new. And then it says sometimes chadoshim mamish. Mamish nu. Not like some old thing that I'm commemorating, remembering things that happened. Imagine the vitality and the spirit that you can reignite that moment when you were completely consumed, completely excited. The moment you danced Simchas Torah with the Rebbe, the moment you went to Chassidus, the moment of a Farbrengen. This is one of the ways we avoid the pitfalls of the challenges of life. So as it comes to the anniversary, the 65th of Yud Shvat, our job is to make sure it's not an old story. And that requires closing your eyes and remembering something and feeling as if it's happening right now. Not azman esa shesherle, the time that it's thing, meaning eroding the memory, we're moving on. Now, obviously, we don't want to experience the trauma or the sadness of the moment. We want to experience the beauty of it. So that's what Yud Shvat, that's the Chassidus Yud Shvat. And the best way to do it is through Bas Legani, learning it, but applying it. Taking this concept and saying, this is what the Rebbe said 65 years ago, the Frierdiker Rebbe was printed, published Maimer. Tavshin Tezvav 60 years ago, and then again 40 years ago, Tavshin Lamed Hey, the Rebbe said this Maimer with all the details. Learn it with your mind well, but apply it. Take the idea and say, what does it mean to my life? How do I take my little shtuz de lumaza? Or the other themes there. How do I go out of my hagbolas? How do I go out of my structure? Not only out of the structure, but out of the whole context of structure even. To a point which is completely beyond. How do I experience that in my life? And one of the ways is to transcend time and space. To find some way to reconnect to that moment that's so special. Because when you do that, that's when you bring it alive in the fullest sense of the word. That's not just a memory, it's recreating it, and even with more passion than it was then. That's our challenge. That's the Yud Shvat challenge to each one of us. And if we do that, there's no question that we can re-experience it that way, and of course be their living example to our families, to our children, to everyone we meet. When people see someone that's alive, why are you so excited today? And you say, excited? Here's what just happened. It didn't just happen, it happened years ago. No, but I'm reliving it right now, as if it was then. This is one of the most beautiful things that people can do. That's what memory has the power to do, to take you back there, and not just, or take that and bring it here, and live it as if it was then, with that same type of excitement. And everyone can relate to this. Think of those magical moments in your life, and think of, if I only could hold on to that. And that's what we have stories for, we have nugunim for, we have experiences. And together we can often reignite it in that fashion. So again, this has been MyLife, Chassidus Applied, episode 53. I invite you all to join this contest, which has a nice incentive of $10,000 for the winning essay, as will be determined by the judges, the 5 judges, panel of judges. Best essay that will take a Inyan Chassidus, a Maimer from Chassidus, something from the 7 Rabbeim, and apply it to a real issue and challenge in life. So until next Sunday, and for more details on this contest, please go to meaningfullife.com/MyLife/contest. All the guidelines, all the details are there, and what's required to submit. And I hope this, share it with everyone that may not be listening to this, as a great opportunity here on many, many levels. So until next Sunday from 8 to 9, this has been Simon Jacobson, MyLife, Chassidus Applied, episode 53.